All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back to HL Chemistry with Mr. Kenton. We're continuing our discussion and our notes on the mole, and we're going to be shifting here in how we can make conversions from different units or different particles or different types of units within the same substance, right? So this would be your idea of being able to move between particles, moles, mass, or maybe volume, moles, mass. So those types of calculations are what we're going to be moving towards and looking at next. And so hopefully you're keeping up with this. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm looking forward to sharing with you what it looks like to do these types of problems and to have those types of skills and what we need in order to be successful in that area. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So converting from moles to particles or particles to moles, that should be pretty straightforward to us. We know that in order to do that, we need to convert moles to particles or particles to moles. We have to use Avogadro's number as our conversion factor. Okay, so that's going to be what's going to allow us to move from moles to particles or particles to moles, whichever way we're moving it, right? So remember, that's that 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Now, you guys have probably seen something very similar to this before. It's kind of like a little mole map. And so what we've got going on here, we're really focusing on this way of going from particles to the mole or vice versa. And so notice that what we've got going on is that in order to go from moles to particles, we would need to multiply by Avogadro's number. If we wanted to go from particles to moles, what we would need to do is we need to divide by Avogadro's number. And again, just as kind of a recap, the types of particles we could be dealing with, atoms, molecules, and formula units, if we're specifically dealing with elements, compounds, in that context. But there are other things that we can use Avogadro's number for in order to get to that number of particles. I'm just thinking of recently in AP Chem, we've been working with photons. And if you guys remember, when we talk about the energy of photons, it's typically in joules per photon. So if we wanted to know the energy per mole of photon, we would need to just multiply that by Avogadro's number, and that would get us into that perspective of how many joules of energy we would need for a mole of photons, right, to cause an emission of light using the photoelectric effect. So that just gives us some context that Avogadro's number doesn't always mean atoms, molecules, or formula units. But in most of the cases, what we're looking at, that's what it's going to give us. Now, here are some problems. I'm not going to sit here and go through every single one of these right now. I'm thinking I'm going to make a video, a follow-up to this one, where I work through maybe two of these, one going from atoms to moles, or from particles to moles, and then another going from moles to particles. Okay, so just be on the lookout for that. I would say for you guys, take the time, pause the video, solve these 8 questions. It should be pretty straightforward. And then once you've solved those 8 questions, move on to the next portion of this video. Okay, so make sure you solve these, get your answers, and then once you've got them, move on to the next part. So hopefully you were able to spend the time solving those 8 problems and looking at them. And so now I just want to take a look at the conversion of being able to go from moles to mass or mass to moles. And so if we're thinking about it, the last conversion, we talked about how we needed to use Avogadro's number as our conversion factor. Well, in order to go from moles to mass or mass to moles, we're going to need to use a substance's molar mass as our conversion factor to move between those different units, because it's going to allow us to connect and get to our desired unit because it has grams per mole in it. Now, if we're thinking about kind of that mole roadmap, this is what we're dealing with, right? So we were over here. Well, so now we're over here. We're looking at the mole to mass piece. And again, you should be noticing that when we're going from the mole to something else, we're typically having to, well, not typically, we're having to multiply by whatever conversion factor it is that we're using. So in this case, we would be multiplying by molar mass in order to get to mass. But if we're going from whatever is on the outside, in this case mass, we would need to divide by that conversion factor in order to get to the mole. And so in this case, if we had a mass of substance and we were trying to figure out moles, we would divide by the molar mass of that substance in order to calculate the moles that we have of that particular substance. That should be pretty straightforward to us because that's a skill that you've been working with since Honors Chem. So this should be pretty much a review right here. Now, here are some additional problems. Again, I'm not going to spend the time to go through every single one of these right now. I think what I'll do is I'll make a follow-up video, just like what I did with the previous information when it was going from particles to moles. And I'll probably pick one of them where I go from mass to moles, and I'll go from moles to mass, and have that worked out for you so that you can see kind of the thought process to make sure that, hey, am I setting it up properly? And so, again, my challenge to you guys, when you get to this point in the video, look at these 10 questions, go ahead and solve them, set them up, get your answers, and then once you've done that, then you can move on to the next thing. So, yeah, I appreciate that you guys taking the time to watch through these videos. And so as I end this video, I want you to make sure that you do these problems, you did the problems that were previously there, and come to class with any questions that you have as it pertains to these conversions of being able to go from particles to moles or even mass to moles. So hopefully this was a good review. Hopefully this is something that you feel very confident and comfortable with. And so if you have questions, bring them to class. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Take care, guys, and we'll see you soon.